Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a Undercolor of Law hot take on what is going on with the Manhattan DA's conviction of President-elect Trump. Judge Merchan has postponed the original sentencing date, and there's a lot of spin going on about that, even from very mainstream media. So take a look at the CNN headline shot here. Indefinitely? Well, technically, that's true, because he vacated the current sentencing date and hasn't set a new one. Now, if you really took the word indefinitely as an accurate description, then any time a judge has not set a date yet for a motions hearing, a sentencing, a trial, one could characterize that as judge has postponed the trial date indefinitely. It's only indefinite because he hasn't set a date yet. Now, there's some things that have to happen. There's some questions about what's going to happen before there is a sentencing date, but that is just not accurately described. Now, there's even better spin than that, of course. Take a look at the, I think, soon-to-be White House spokesperson, Stephen Chung's quote here. Take a look at that. We can look at it together. He says to Fox Digital, "It's a decisive win for President Trump. The hoax Manhattan case is now fully stayed and sentencing is adjourned. President Trump won a landslide victory." Not true, not a landslide. "As the American people have issued a mandate to return him to office." Don't see him live very much talking like this, right? Usually Stephen Chung's just being quoted here. But you're going to start to see him a lot more live if he's at that podium. Can you imagine having to listen to him for 4 years talking like this? Kind of like, ouch. But he does have an amazing ability, if he can actually speak like that, to speak in these sort of like MAGA sound bites. So we'll see how long he can keep that up, when he's talking live. But let's analyze what he said a little bit. It's not a decisive win for Trump. It's just that the sentencing has been postponed. It's not a hoax Manhattan case. Fully stayed, meaningless point. I mean, it's not even stayed. He just has not yet decided now when to do the sentencing. And yes, the sentencing is adjourned. That's the only true thing in there. So let's take a look at the actual order here. It's pretty short. We can read it together. We'll put it up. I won't read all of it. So Judge Merchan writes, November 19th, the court receives separate submissions from the defendant and from the district attorney seeking various forms of relief. And the respective applications, that means the pleadings, they're decided as follows. It's hereby ordered that defendant's request for leave to file a motion to dismiss pursuant to particular criminal law is granted. That does not mean that the motion to dismiss has been granted. All right, I mean, probably can realize that, but you're going to hear some spin as though that's what it's implying. It's just saying they can file the motion to dismiss. Now, that motion to dismiss is going to be based, once again, on immunity arguments because of the Supreme Court's terrible opinion about presidential immunity. Merchan doesn't have to entertain that now. I mean, he could just schedule the sentencing, go ahead and let them deal with this stuff on appeal. But he's being cautious. I'm not entirely in agreement with him on this, but he's being very prudent to kind of want to hear all this first. And really, it's because he wants to make a good record. He wants to be able to lay out his reasoning as to why, if he denies the motion to dismiss, what's his legal reasoning, so that there is a good record for the higher courts, because there'll be appeals of this all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's probably why he's doing that. And much as I'm impatient with that, I have to say that that may be a prudent thing to do. He's kind of treating it like he would treat any other case. He wants to fully consider the motions, give his reasons for it before it goes on. Now, it's possible he might decide to dismiss the case, and he'd have to give reasons for that as well. But to the extent he's going to deny it and let the conviction stand, move forward to sentencing, not a bad idea to actually fully explain the reasons here, even though, as I said, me and many people are impatient for him just to get on with it. So, the rest of the order. The joint request for a motion schedule is granted. So the defendant, as well as the prosecution, had said, hey, let's postpone things a little bit. Let's get these motions out of the way, and then we'll talk about what happens next. So they all agreed to do that, and the defendant, Trump, has to file his motion about the dismissal by December 2nd, and then the prosecutor has to reply to that by December 9th. Court will not accept any reply briefs, meaning any further ones, because lawyers like to do sur rebuttal and can just go on forever. He's saying, that's it. Defense goes, prosecution goes, then I'm considering it, making my decision. Then they're also granting a stay, that's the adjournment, until they get all the papers in, and they're going to also put off the sentencing. As he says, the joint application for a stay of sentencing is granted to the extent that the November 26, 2024 date is adjourned. That's very important, that language, because it really contradicts Chung's spin on it, contradicts the misleading headline that's postponed indefinitely. He's only granting a stay. Chung says fully stayed. No, it's only granted to the extent that November 26 is no longer the sentencing date. That's the only part of it that stayed. So that's hardly a huge victory for Trump. It's really just a scheduling order that's been put out there. Now, take a listen to some of the, to be expected, but kind of silly spin on why it would be bad to proceed with the sentencing, and we'll take a listen here.
Now, of course, legally and politically, he should throw out the case. It's a loser for so many reasons, and both Alvin Bragg's office and I would say Judge Merchan have manipulated the law along the way in order to get the result that they wanted. But we don't know what's going to happen, and in fact, if he were still to rule against Donald Trump and deny this motion to dismiss, you could still see a sentencing date set before Inauguration Day. It would be foolish, but my only point is, let's wait and see what happens here.
That's wild. A sentencing before Inauguration Day. At that point, I would think we would get some sort of Supreme Court intervention.
Notice the emphasis on politically and legally. Why politically? Why should Judge Merchan be concerned with making a politically bad decision? I mean, that really begs the question of why everyone on the MAGA world side thinks that politics should be involved. Even though they claim that the whole prosecution is based on politics, they're saying the judge needs to take into account political reasons for not doing the sentencing then. The anchor further suggests that, how ridiculous that there could possibly be a sentencing only a few days before the inauguration, and if that were to happen, that the Supreme Court of the United States should intervene. Like, why should they intervene just because it's close to the inauguration? Because SCOTUS doesn't want the inauguration parties to be ruined? I mean, there's no legal basis for that. Again, purely political, purely atmospheric. It has nothing to do with legal reasons. Now, the other thing I want to bring to your attention is the defense's motion to dismiss, reasons to put this off. Todd Blanche is the attorney who represented Trump, as you may call it, that trial. And in his letter to Merchan, which Merchan took into account, he demanded that the case against Trump be tossed. You can take a look at some of his language here. So Blanche says, November 5th, 2024, the nation's people issued a mandate that supersedes the political motivations of the Manhattan DA, the people. This case must be immediately dismissed. It's mandated to be dismissed by the federal Constitution, the Presidential Transition Act, the interests of justice, in order to facilitate the orderly transition of executive power following President Trump's overwhelming victory in the 2024 election. He's beginning to sound a little bit like Stephen Chung. So it wasn't an overwhelming victory, right? In fact, we're learning that more and more it was a very narrow margin of victory, but not overwhelming. Mandated by the federal Constitution, that's his argument, fine. He wants to argue that Trump isn't immune and can't be prosecuted. That's why it has to be dismissed. Presidential Transition Act? You gotta be kidding. Trump isn't complying in any way with the Presidential Transition Act. Orderly transition of executive power would be helped a lot if Trump would actually cooperate, do background checks with the FBI, agree to meet with the transition team, do the normal transition. That's what's really screwing up the transition right now. But the most important thing that Blanche says is when he says that the election is a mandate that, quote, supersedes the political motivations of the district attorney's people. Right now, I don't think Bragg's prosecution was politically motivated, but that's the point. He wants to say that the election result supersedes the people's will because the district attorney represents the people of New York State. Blanche is likely going to be the next Deputy Attorney General of the United States, number 2 at Justice. You can well imagine where DOJ is going to be going with this. They'll be bringing their efforts to intervene in any of these state cases, always siding with putting things off for the Trump regime and MAGAs generally. Completely inappropriate for them to do that. There's nothing more state-centric than state criminal law. But that's the new world, and that's why it's really going to be up to the states now, like I've been talking about. You know, there's that saying, all politics is local, but that really takes on a new meaning in this day and age. So that's it for now. We'll keep an eye on whether there is a new sentencing date coming up, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for all the comments and replies. They're great to read, really helpful, and do subscribe to the channel, and look forward to talking to you soon.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.